Not even with stuff outside of us, with each other.
Right. What do you want to talk about, Mike?
Yeah, Mike. Throw something. What do you think, buddy? Oh, Mike, come on.
He peed a
Neither
little.
were we. It's crazy.
Yeah, we're completely unprepared.
Yeah.
Clearly.
We can wing this.
Let's talk a little about what we've got going on, especially this month.
We could talk about that for like the next 6 episodes.
Right. Where to start?
So let's start with axe throwing.
Okay, axe throwing.
Currently, we are transplanting our Bixby location into a Midtown Tulsa location.
Yes.
So
and I'm excited about that.
We have, 4 days left.
I have worked my ass off getting that place ready.
Big time.
It's crazy.
I looked over my shoulder to make sure my brother wasn't here because he probably jump kicked both of us. Shout out Larry, actually. He's been a fucking boss. He's so the Midtown location, I was talking to my mom about this today. Larry's our partner, for those of you that where am I looking?
His brother.
And my brother. We're probably 85% built out in this new location, and except for maybe 2 hours where I helped him one day, he is pretty much not moving stuff. We've had a lot of people moving stuff in there, but actually building out, he's done everything except for like 2 hours of work with one other person.
No, that's awesome.
So if I'm him at this point, I'm just going to be like, stay the fuck out of here. I'll finish this.
I think he actually told Bailey that.
He did. He did.
She said, "What can I do to help?" And he said, "Don't touch anything.
Do not touch it."
So,
which we've got a great team that have helped a lot as far as breaking down, cleaning up, and painting the old location to get it into
absolutely
to turn it back over to the landlord.
And I'm really excited about this location as far as for axe throwing, and I think for kind of the future in which we're taking our axe throwing. I'm not saying we're taking the entire segment of axe throwing in a direction
yet,
but the direction we are taking our axe throwing is this little boutique style arena. And I don't know, for anybody that happens to be watching or listening to this, if you've been axe throwing, kind of the norm seems to be these big warehouse type places, and we've really been focusing lately on little more intimate, smaller venues with maybe 6 targets. We just took one over in Claremore that has 4 targets. Right. So it's going to be a lot more intimate experience. But from a pure business standpoint, the overhead's going to be lower. The cost of startup's a lot less, and your turnaround time back to black should be
especially right now with
faster.
Building materials being so expensive. Yeah. But I think it was Chance that maybe told you, and then you think about it, it makes a lot of sense. Most of your money is made on a minimum amount of lanes, say 4. Let's call it 4 lanes. Because even if you do have 10 lanes, the short time that you have 10 lanes completely full, which is probably a Friday and a Saturday night, you also have 4 lanes full. So the vast, vast, vast majority of time, you're going to be doing 4 lanes of business.
Right. Yeah, there's only, at least here from what we've seen, and the original Gotwood location is going on 4 years, which is a long time in this industry. But what we've seen is it kind of worked out to about 40% of your targets make a majority of your money. You only really need those other targets maybe 8 hours of the week, your Friday, Saturday evenings.
Yep.
And then you're doing other things like mobile events and corporate events during the week and stuff to supplement that. But going back to that boutique style, I think for us it's kind of going to be kind of the wave of the future, finding mid-level sectors instead of major cities, because at this point in that game, every major city has 2, 3, 4, 7, 14 axe throwing places.
Right.
But now finding a way to service those outlying areas that are a little removed from a major metropolis, I think for us will be kind of the next step.
Absolutely. We're already doing that. I mean,
Right,
we're
right.
taking
Absolutely.
that step, right? And in addition, a couple of things you can do with it, like our Midtown location. I think it's going to have a little bit more of a cool vibe to it. We're getting more with the additional pieces outside of just the throwing, which is the bread and butter, of course. And we want to spread that culture out everywhere we go. But adding more games, adding more things for the kids to do, adding, pinball. We're really looking forward to get some pinball in there. I think I agree, and I'm excited about that because for all the reasons you mentioned, but smaller footprint, smaller overhead, all of that, I think we have an opportunity to kind of open something else. Well, because of that, you get to you're able to go into areas that maybe are already hot areas or have a cool vibe going on, like our Midtown location right now.
Sure.
That's one of the biggest things. One of the big reasons I'm excited is there's not a weekend that goes by that there's not some fairly large event going on, if not weekly. So I'm pretty excited about it. I think it has the opportunity, the potential to bust pretty wide open pretty quickly.
Yep. And then we've got the Sand Springs, Oklahoma location coming online this week, actually.
Shout out Sand Springs because that community, that town has jumped in with us.
Absolutely.
It's crazy.
Absolutely. In my experience of doing this, I've never seen a community really wrap their arms around it early on as much as the Sand Springs community has. And then shout out to other Brad for everything he's done there. He's really taken ownership of this
100%.
and really ran with it. And again, he's done 90% of the work there, getting it ready, and it's looking great. Going back to kind of the startup and the overhead of that one, we had a really good deal with the city of Sand Springs. They worked really well with us, getting us into this property and all of that. But with building materials, the cost being so high, we've really, I say we, Brad especially, has done a really good job of repurposing a lot of stuff, finding building materials from other sources other than your traditional sources of, the big box stores, and being really creative with that, but also making still a sturdy and safe environment for less than what you would pay full retail right now for. So
and very cool. And it is a little bit different because we just stated, we're going smaller footprint. Well, this one's 4,000 square feet.
Yeah.
It just happened that the city had that building.
Sure.
And it's literally perfect storm. I mean, pretty excited about that one too, which grand opening is Friday, soft open Thursday. Actually just on the way over here was on the phone with our games guy that tried to go back and say we wouldn't have anything until Saturday.
You said
that didn't work out. So Wednesday morning we're getting our stuff.
Awesome. Yeah, and that's great too. That's the first one that I've been directly involved in that's got billiards and some other stuff too. So I am excited about that. Now, there are plenty of Axe houses around the country that have a lot more amenities, but as far as what we do around here with those smaller footprints, this one being able to have air hockey and billiards and some arcade style games and pinball and stuff, that's pretty exciting for us.
Absolutely. And I don't know, A&R I'm not sure about. Do they have...
Last time I went and visited Jeff and Jessica, they did not have any kind of games. They had actually just gotten their beer and wine license to start serving beer and wine, but games, no, they have room, and they could definitely expand into that. But they had went to kind of in their back, kind of a private kind of area like we're doing with the one in Sand Springs, the private party area with 2 targets that you could reserve.
Stadium room.
Yeah, the stadium room, exactly. So, the future there looks really cool. I'm excited about that. And then go out to Claremore, which will be the smallest of our boutique-style footprints, but it's also really exciting there, too. That
great location.
The location's awesome. It's right by a small college out there. And again, the community seems ripe to kind of want to embrace something. They don't have a lot to do without having to come into Tulsa.
So the other thing, as you were mentioning that, kind of going not necessarily rural. I mean, it definitely is, but going to these smaller markets, and Claremore is a much, much smaller market.
Sure.
You're going to be the only show in town, probably, hopefully for some time. So I think, anytime you can do that versus fighting for potentially the same demographic with competitors or with yourself, which we've done that as well, I think it's going to be a leg up.
And not even really direct competitors, but I'm talking just for entertainment dollar. That's been a struggle for a lot of businesses since, COVID kind of came into our lives a year and a half ago. People are a lot more sensitive of where their money is going.
Definitely.
And they have to be, rightfully so, but entertainment dollar is something we're fighting for, but you're not seeing a huge rush back to the movie theaters like I thought you would. I'm a huge movie guy, and
Same.
And it killed me to not be able to go into a theater, but I haven't been since they've reopened.
Right.
So clearly it didn't kill me that bad, So where are those entertainment dollars going?
But how much is that not to detract here, but because I'm the same. I'm a movie guy. I've been to one since they reopened, but is that more because of everything that we have going on? And like, there's a lot of things that I used to do quite a bit, and I've had to drop it. I mean,
Sure.
there's from there you choose between your hobby and fun stuff and like family time and all that kind of stuff. So
Yeah, a lot of that, yes, but movies always kind of seem to be the one thing that I made at least 3 hours time for a week. My wife and kids and I, we got to where we were seeing at least probably one movie a week, and that was, for me, was a tradition that started way back in college with me and my buddies in Tahlequah. I used to go out to the drive-in theater on Tuesdays and watch a movie, and that carried on through adult and when our children were small together, and it just kind of carried on. So a little trip down nostalgia lane, memory lane there, but fighting for the
dollar.
Yeah, the dollar, the entertainment dollar. I think you're seeing breweries, restaurants even still trying to fight back from the COVID. So
definitely. And we're all facing some of the same challenges there too. Specifically, restaurants are getting hit with not finding people to work.
Oh, and that's a big struggle right now.
I feel like we've been pretty lucky with the this area and being able to keep everything staffed pretty well, and part of that is because of overstaffing early on. So now,
which was by design,
and
definitely a hard thing to do, right? Is overstaff on purpose in a slow time because you're preparing for the future and you want to keep people on staff, good people on staff, and knowing that hopefully when things turned around, you'd be in a better position to expand and grow because you had those people. But it's definitely a struggle on payroll to keep those people around. So
from a business aspect, payroll is generally, not all industries, but payroll is generally one of your top expenses.
For us, it definitely is. Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah. Those struggles, but in these communities that we're finding, I think people are wanting something to do that doesn't break the bank, but it's a little out of the norm, and ultimately it's just fun and a temporary relief of the day-to-day struggles and stress, right? We hear that all the time in our industry. This was just going to turn into an Axoing podcast, apparently, but in our industry, we hear a lot. This is therapy. We get a lot of stress relief. Yeah, we get a lot of high-stress industries, nursing, teaching, first responders, and just people that are just generally uptight in their day-to-day come in, and once they do it, they find out that they're leaving and their shoulders are a little less tense. They might be sore, but they're a little less tense, and they're a lot less uptight because it is a stress relief, but it's also fun and can be entertaining and all the things we fell in love with it for. So the future for that, I think, is really exciting. I'm also personally really excited to be able to kind of jump back into, once we kind of hopefully settle these things down, because we've got 3 locations coming online within a matter of weeks of each other. So
Right.
it's especially for you, because I left right in the middle of it on vacation.
Thank you for that.
Thank Kari for that, because I was telling Mike before you got here that it was horrible timing, but I'm glad I did it, and there's no way I couldn't have without divorce or getting murdered, because she had this planned a long time. She doesn't get to see her family that often, so I'm glad I was stepped away for 2 weeks. It was hard, and I wasn't completely removed, but I was definitely the most removed from the business that I had been in since we opened, and it was nice, but coming back and stepping back into it, it's also almost overwhelming. You don't know where to focus right away. You're just like, I don't know. But I am looking forward to getting all those things kind of settled down, and then I want to throw a little bit of ourselves into the other things besides axe throwing that we've got going. The Morningwood Coffee brand I'm still really excited about, and I want to see where that goes and where we expand into that.
And working through a couple of things we've done with Morningwood to try to further get the name out there, with Jesse in particular from Throve. So I think there's definitely growth, and you go on with the other
that, and then Toro Knives. You know, we've had a little bit of a setback there as far as production and figuring that out, but we're ironing that out, and we're real close to having a streamlined process to where we can meet demand in a lot more timely manner, but still provide the all made in USA product that we kind of priding ourselves on right now. So I'm really looking forward to those 2 endeavors, and then, you know, the ideas that are still rolling around in the back of our brains, having a little, maybe more time and freedom here in the near future to kind of expand into those too, is exciting. I think for, what'd you call me, a serial entrepreneur? For serial entrepreneurs and small business owners, I don't know that ever really goes away, and I don't know that I'd really want it to. I like thinking of things and ideas, and a lot of times it's innovation within your sector, but a lot of times it's also just new and completely random.
I think it helps keep that edge too.
Absolutely,
You need that. If you just stop thinking, and I am guilty of doing this a lot, and that's just getting down in the weeds, and you're spending all day for weeks just getting things done, right? And that's why, here's the one real tip from today I'll throw out there is, as soon as you can afford to bring someone in to do some of those things, and we both do this on way different levels, but on multiple levels, do that, because that frees you up to do what you're meant to do. That frees you up to do what you're more talented in. And we've talked about this a little bit in past episodes, but if you can do it, and maybe even right on the edge of maybe you can't, it will usually pay off. If you have the passion, you're going to go get it. Bring someone in that can handle some of the, and they don't have to be mundane tasks, but some of the things that, number one, you're not passionate about. Maybe you're not that good at them.
It goes
right
all back to the things that you hear all these famous influencers and people say, you know, triple down on your strengths and surround yourself with good people that kind of maybe pick up those pieces. And we've touched on that before too. But as far as the creative process goes, I like that. And I've said this to you before, and you've heard me say it a million times, but if it's an idea in your brain that you can't shake, I feel I owe it to myself to explore that more, one way or the other. Because I'll have a million, and I'll think about them for sometimes a day, a good solid day. You have an idea, and then you wake up the next morning and you don't even really remember what you were thinking about. So I let those kind of go by the wayside. But those ones that are just constantly there nagging at the back of your brain, just like, you know, what if this, what if that, what if this? Those are the ones that I get really excited about trying to explore. And we've got a couple that we've been talking about for a couple of years. That I really want to kind of push forward one way or the other and see what happens. But then there's a couple others, you know, that we've talked about just on this podcast that have come up, and they've got really excited about. So looking forward to seeing where all that stuff goes too.
And that kind of is another reason to, it's really hard. What we've done in the last few months is put some people within our organizations into roles to really thrive. They can run with it, and if they make it through there and they're successful, they're probably going to be lifers, and that enables us to jump into the other things. We would not be able to get to some of the things that we're talking about that are kind of on the back burner right now that he mentioned that we've been talking about for quite some time without people to take over some of the roles, and we have to hand some of them off.
Absolutely.
We'll just never get there otherwise.
Absolutely. And that's kind of a struggle too, right? With any small business owner, especially if you create something your own from nothing and you kind of build it into something that's pretty cool, and then
Hard to let go of anything.
Yeah, it's hard to let go, but at the same time, it's also hard to really trust, right? Trust those people. But when you find those people, if you are willing to kind of step back a little bit, it allows you to free up and explore those other avenues. But at the same time, you don't want it to lose that essence that made it,
Right.
What
Which
it
is
was,
difficult.
which is very, very difficult.
Well, and then one of the biggest things in that is, okay, now you've decided you can trust someone, you trust them. Will they do it differently than you?
Yeah,
Man, that's so hard to not micromanage that process. Like,
right.
the best thing, tip number 2, give people goals. Say, hey, this is how we've done it. But here's the thing: as long as this is done by this time and this is the outcome,
Right.
cool.
Yeah.
And that's tough too, because
Something Dr. Dan said to me a lot was trust but verify. Empower people to make some decisions, but you also kind of have to be there to kind of make sure they're staying a little grounded and within means. And I mean, I'll name names. I'm going to throw Cash right out there. Cash is going to be that for us, I think.
Right.
Cash, if you guys don't know Cash, he's been in the axling industry a long time for a young man. I think he's 25, 26 years old. He's been doing axling even longer than I have. And he's got a lot of great ideas, and he's got an entrepreneurial mind, and he definitely wants to own his own businesses. But we're going to kind of give him Claremore to kind of be his vehicle.
Right.
While it's still under our name and our brand, it's going to kind of be his to explore and run and try ideas. But at the same time, like we told him, it's going to have to be within reason too. It's not a blank check to just go nuts. But it is going to be a time for him to explore himself and see where he shines. And then we'll be there to kind of steer him in directions that our experience in other parts of the industry will guide him. So
well, I think, like you're saying, give the parameters, right? Feel free to try new things, do some things, like take ownership. That's really what you want that person to do is, and 100% he will, but you want that person to take ownership and treat it like their baby. Think of it as their own. Because a person like that's their goal, like you mentioned. And what better training ground? I mean, what an opportunity for him.
Kind
I
of
mean,
the
we
same,
both trust him, but
the same thing that happened to Miguel. And if you're listening or watching this podcast and you don't know who Miguel is in axe throwing, then I don't know where you've been. But I saw early on the potential in Miguel, and then just his drive and ambition, and then especially once he fell in love with the sport, his commitment to the sport and then to the people and the community and everything. So you got to kind of let them be them, but at the same time be there to kind of steer them and rein them in sometimes and all that stuff. And I find myself now saying to Miguel the stuff that Dr. Dan said to me 3-4 years ago. We opened up Gotwood 1 in late 2017, and by February of 2018, I'm like, where's the second one going? And Dr. Dan's like, oh, whoa, slow down, calm down. You gotta kind of figure this one out first and make sure it's a well-oiled machine, because he's been there and seen it in his businesses that people grow too fast and they lose control of everything. So it was a good 18 months in to Gotwood 1 before I even started thinking about second locations, a good 2 years before we jumped into Stillwater. And then it seemed like after that, just kind of started to snowball. But that comes with what you were saying, is find somebody to kind of take over your day-to-day. And that, for me, that somebody was Miguel. He was the reason I was able to kind of let go of the day-to-day of Gotwood and axe throwing as a sport and recreation, because he was up to the task of keeping our customer and to a level, even in some aspects, elevating it, by bringing his own personality into it. And if I would have never trusted him with that, it may have never even happened.
Right.
He could have either gotten disgruntled and gone somewhere else, or, just given up on the sport altogether. But I did kind of give him free reign as far as that aspect of it goes. But I every day had to rein him in on other things, and he'll tell you that too if you talk to him. I would come in the morning and I would put my hands on his shoulders and say, "Hey, this isn't personal, this is business, but you got to do this, and this." And he's like, "You're right," and he would kind of refocus. And
"You're right, Poppy."
Yep, you're right, Poppy. And now he's telling me, like, when you're growing up and you go, it's starting to sound like my dad, he's telling me those same stories. Like, I hear myself saying the stuff to my employees that you told me 2.5 years ago. So that's kind of cool to watch that evolution. And if you have enough trust in yourself, your system, and then you empower your people to do that and kind of let them grow and shine, that's really exciting. So all goes back to being excited about the future and the growth and everything. Still scary. But I think the moment you stop being scared too is you should be a little worried.
Yep. Something's going to catch up to you.
Being cautious is a fine line too, right? And I think we probably talked about that in some of our earlier episodes too. Like, my dad, love him to death. He was a company man, worked for the same company 30 years. And then when there were changes at the top of that company, he was laid off. And all of a sudden, he's sitting there now as a 60-year-old man that had done worked for the same company, worked his way up within that company from very bottom level to general manager. So he had gone far in those 30 years, but now he's sitting there without a job at a company that he'd literally given his entire adult life to.
Right.
And it happened to be at the same exact time that we had gotten the shop here in Jinx and as Beard and Blade, and I was kind of trying to explore myself as a small business owner, and I said, "Hey, why not use the talents you have, and let's go into business together?" And I tried to convince him, and he's just not that person.
Right.
He's not that risk taker. He likes the steady paycheck every 2 weeks, you contribute to his 401k, has his benefits.
Nothing wrong with that, man.
No, there is nothing wrong with that. But an entrepreneurial mindset, I think, is different. You're willing to step past those lines a lot more often. And that's always been kind of my mindset. And plenty of times I stepped off into sharp rocks and shallow water, but
there's freedom in that. There's so much freedom in that.
There really is.
But it's scary. I mean, you just said this. That freedom is amazing, and that's why we do it. But at the same time, there's stress that comes with that. Whereas my whole plan was to stay within the same company for my entire career. Once I got out of school, and I'd spent 8 years with Walmart in distribution centers and worked my way up there.
Biggest corporate as you can get.
Right. That's the yeah. So. And then after that, within marketing, I wanted to do the same thing and started building my way up. So I really enjoyed that corporate side. But I will say this. If you've got that piece of entrepreneurial spirit in you and it gets tickled just a little bit, it is really hard to go back. I can't see. I mean, you would do what you would have to do for your family, but wow, that would be so hard to jump back into a corporate lifestyle. And I mean, it would have to be very much worth it. But
I don't think I could ever do it. I really don't. And for me, it goes back to what you just said, the word lifestyle. Lifestyle is a lot more important than money to me. And I don't say, I don't mean lifestyle like it's cush and you fluff off responsibility and all that. It's completely the opposite almost. I mean, you work a lot more when you work for yourself than you do a 9 to 5. But it's just that freedom in the stress, and that sounds weird, but it's a different kind of stress. It's a stress that you put on yourself.
Yep.
Because you know your obligations and you know your time frame. It's like it's up to you to make those fit, right? If you're 2 weeks out and you know rent's coming due and all that, you got to hustle your ass off to get those dollars, or you're going to fail. So it's stress, but it's a freedom in that stress because it's all on you.
Yep.
And some people like that and some people don't. Nothing wrong with it either way. It's just people are set up different. And I knew early on, I had marketing classes in college.
Built different.
Built different. Yeah, had marketing classes in college, and I knew, even from those early days at 18, 19 years old, we had projects in marketing class that I turned into real companies, and never really had any real success with them, but a couple of them had like little flashes that were enough to go, oh, hey, this could be something,
right.
And then I actually fell into a corporate job, and I would say not Walmart corporate by any means. It was still a privately owned company, but they had a couple thousand employees with 7 or 8 different department vice presidents and, all that. And I spent 5 years there, ended up getting fired. But I knew right then, I was like, I am not set up for that. I'm not set up for that 8 a.m. morning meeting to talk about the same stuff you already know. And if you don't, then why are you hell in this position? It's just like all that stuff I'm not set up for. And I knew then. So once I kind of bounced from there and started my own company within that sector, that's when the tattoos started getting lower under the sleeves, because I knew at that point I would probably never go back,
right?
Regardless of what that meant. If my company tanked, I would just try to do something else, for myself, and that freedom kind of meant a lot to me. And now at 47 years old, I
what
I could never see myself going back to that style of working for somebody. You're always working for somebody, right? I have bosses, even though I'm my own boss. My boss is my customer base, my clientele, But as far as a corporate structure, I don't think I could ever do that. And I'm not putting you down if that's what you do. My parents are that way. I love them to death. They're not wired that way, right?
And that's what it really comes down to is have you experienced it? It's just too scary for some as well. And it's a discomfort. It can turn into a discomfort. And just the same way that for like us, the discomfort would come in exactly all the kind of the cons that you just mentioned of corporate life.
Sure. Just
is
pushing yourself, as a square peg into a round hole.
Right.
Doesn't work for me. But somebody like my mom, she can excel in that situation.
Yep.
She's an awesome, what I would call number 2 or number 3 within a company. And she's retired now, but she worked her whole life for bigger corporations, Paramount at one point, doing the books within Simon Properties and all these big companies, and she liked that. And you can have great success within that structure. Absolutely. Too, climbing the ladder and bringing your own individual twist to those tasks. But at the end of the day, it could come down to you're sitting in a situation like my dad, where you literally gave 30 years of your life to a company, and within a 15-minute lunch break, you're out on your ass.
Yep.
Because you don't meet a certain criteria anymore, or whatever the case may be. That, to me, feels weird. And maybe when we're all dead and buried at the end of the day, it doesn't mean anything. Yeah. But that time getting there, I've always said I would much rather be old and looking back on my life and going, well, I tried, rather than even being more successful and going, I wonder what if. I would much rather be at the end of my journey less successful but happy in my failures than miserable in perceived success. And that's
No,
how
I love it. I love it. So what's shift gears a little bit?
All right. We got a little deep there. Sorry, Mike.
What? No, not at all. Sorry, Mike. It's okay, Mike.
Mike.
Mic check. Let's talk about what's the goal? I mean, so in 6 weeks, less than 6 weeks, let's say in a month from now, there will be 7. Is 7 the right number? 7 locations tied to you.
Yeah.
Actually,
Yeah.
7 axe throwing locations tied to you.
I will have at least part ownership in 7 different axe throwing
seven's
locations.
the right number,
I
right?
think it is right.
Man, I literally say it different every time, and I have to stop and count again. But so what's the goal? And I don't know that we've not had this conversation. I mean, to some extent we have, but
Where's the camera at? Is
Yeah.
this it right here? The goal is for somebody to bring me $1 million in a silver briefcase, and I'll sign everything over to you right now. Let's go. After tax. Sorry. So that's like 1.45 million. Bring me $1.45 million.
But it's funny that you say that number because
It's probably worth more than that. A
yeah,
lot more.
that's what I was
But
going to say. If there's 10 locations, I mean, you start looking at
I'd start all over
valuations.
for $1 million cash right now. Absolutely.
100%.
Yeah. Do something else.
Whatever.
Try something else. I'd probably piss that $1 million away trying something. That money would walk just as much as.
Oh, boom! See what he
The
did
rest.
there? Well played.
See what I did there? But no, the real goal, I don't know. There are goals you set within the companies, but as far as what is the goal for all this work, it's like I don't really know because I find so much happiness in doing this right here. I love that creative process of taking something from a literal idea to an actual physical thing. And within this sector, we're having, I think, relatively good success at it.
I think, we were talking about freedoms to some extent. There's also financial freedom, right? If there are 10 locations, I mean, let's just we won't even do numbers, but quick thoughts. 10 locations, all set on a baseline of the flagship Got Wood and Jinx 2019 numbers.
Sure.
Okay, 10 locations.
Yeah.
Okay, that enables a lot of other things.
Absolutely.
I mean, to begin, backfilling positions and slowly letting go of things to where your time is now more available.
Sure.
Whereas right now we're building, so our time is taken up. I mean, we spend a lot of time on all the things we're doing. To be able to bring other people in, and hopefully these are people that they're a cultural fit. They want the same things. They want to fight for the company. Not even the company, but the team, the culture. You're able to do that and then free yourself up time, which is more important than the money. But the time and the money to now start doing some of these other one of two things. One, just higher entry level or higher barrier to entry type industries that are some of the things we've talked about. I mean, some are considerably higher. Or the time to do that, the money to do that, the ability to go and execute on something that's been bouncing around in your head for quite some time.
Sure.
So I think that for me, those are two of the major goals of why I'm doing what I'm doing. Is there is a number out there. We've not, and this is probably faulty of us, we probably should do this, but we've not sat down and looked at, okay, here's the number, because here's the forecasted revenue, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. And this enables to bring these people, free up this amount of time and this amount of money to go and do passion project number 3.
Absolutely.
Or 7.
And you're right. We should do that. And I say the collective we. That's not
the royal we.
The royal we. Yes, that's not a strength of mine.
Right.
But that's where that comes into play of surround yourself with people. You a little bit the yin to my yang, but you're like an enabler. yin to my yang, and then you and then you have people like Heather on the back end that are going to hopefully be there to be like, "Ooh, idiot!"
Hey.
You know, she's got her squirt bottle and she's like, "No, don't do that." But and not to say we are at all there yet, but success breeds success, and those some of those old cliches are true. You know, it takes money to make money.
Yep.
And that's not entirely true, but it does take money and success to be able to enable you to go out and try to get more of those same things that you like to do. So yeah, that's exciting to me. I don't know that I'll ever stop trying to grow and expand brands and do those things because I truly enjoyed that. That's what I like. I don't have a traditional 9 to 5 schedule with weekends off and stuff.
Really?
And you still try to adhere to that, and your kids are a lot younger to me and stuff like that. And I really admire that. You know, you check out Friday at 5, spend the weekend with the family, and be dad and do all that stuff. My kids being older and out of the house, I don't. I mean, I'm all the time just and not to say that I don't ever have time. Clearly, I have time to sit around and watch TV and hang out with my wife and do fun stuff too. But the fun stuff that instead of taking a traditional vacation, the fun stuff for me is looking of like what's next or what can I do to do this and do that and elevate those things. I enjoy that. I'm really looking forward to this next few months of being able to kind of get the places we have in place stable and figuring out those goals and getting the right team in place to propel those, and then being able to kind of explore the other things we've been talking about, some that we mentioned, you know, with the coffee, the knives, and those kind of things, but also some of the newer things that are nothing but an idea right now. I'm really looking forward to kind of seeing what happens with those too. So,
No, 100%. And something just hit me. Tip number 3. When we're talking about the people that, and we've mentioned a few that we brought into, let's call it more of management roles, different roles, but I think a key, and not necessarily one that we have always stuck to, but is you want to keep those people, obviously. So compensate them. There are way different ways to look at it. And I think always staying on that performance-based, base that person, let them go get it, because that's how we build. That's what we do. If they're able to go get it consistently, they deserve what they're going to get. I mean, just be smart about how you structure it. Sure. You know, I think that's something that we could have done better and will, you know, and not that it was that we've done anything bad, but give that person something to shoot for. And I've always heard this and have started saying it over the last few years, but again, give them the matrix to go find it. Here's what you're being judged on, and now your money is tied to it.
Right.
So you want that extra money. You're a go-getter. Great. Love it. You're the kind of person we want here. Here's what you need to do to go get it. Because if you make this company thrive, if you're part of what's pushing it forward, you deserve a piece of that.
Sure.
And
I 100% agree with that. And that's ultimately how I ended up getting fired from that company that I worked with. Is they said that, but they didn't quantify it and they didn't define it. So I'm working harder every time to better my personal self, and then every time I was let down because I felt and I knew my personal performance was excelling, but they weren't financially compensating me like they said they would. So as long as, we need to probably do a better job of clearly defining goals.
That's a better way to say it.
And then let them go get it. And the ones that go get it are definitely the ones that you want to kind of invest more.
Absolutely.
And that will be evident fairly quickly. You can tell the ones that are going to be just in it for a job, and you can tell the ones that want to really push themselves to succeed more.
And you need both.
Absolutely.
By the way.
Absolutely.
You need both.
And there's nothing wrong with that, you know. the vast majority of our employee base, this is a part-time job for them. And that's perfectly fine too. They just need a job to supplement whatever they're doing in their lives, and they're not going to invest much of themselves beyond the time they clock in to the time they clock out within the company, and that's absolutely fine. But then you're going to see the ones, the Miguels, the Cashes, that are going to kind of step up and go, I want to take ownership. Grizz, too, he really wants it. We'll see if he's going to push himself to get there. And those are the kind of the ones that you kind of want to hitch your wagon to and see what happens, you know. So, yeah, all that stuff's really exciting.
We're out of time. So
that was fast.
We've got one episode left in this season. We got to figure out who we want a bomb-ass guest. I'm actually gonna Google that and see what comes up.
Bomb-ass guest. All right. Can
awesome,
you pull
man.
that up at the end of this? You know, just
Bomb-ass
quick
guest.
Google search.
Yeah,
Yeah, just quick Google search. Maybe don't show images.
Yeah, you may want to
Just filter that a little bit. But bomb-ass guests and see what happens.